And we're a go.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. This June 25th, 2020 meeting of the Operations and Services Reopening Work Group is being called to order at 5 p.m. These meetings are public meetings to provide transparency and the opportunity for the public to engage in the process. In order to enable every participant to have a voice in the process, public comment will be accepted via email at reopeningideas@doe.k12.de.us or voicemail at 302-735-4244. All comments and ideas will be forwarded to the respective work groups for review and posted on DOE's reopening page on the website as well. Just want to let everybody know also about the Department of Education reopening website, where to find it. If you go to www.doe.k12.de.us, and you'll see a red COVID-19 link sort of toward the upper left, middle left. Click on that and then find a link to, I think it says reopening work groups, something like that. And then you can find what we're working on. All of the public comment that we have transcribed to date is there for you to look at. You can also see, just a lot of the plans that are out there from the districts and charters. And also on the public meetings website, I think it's publicmeetings.delaware.gov, you can find the agenda for tonight's meeting. There are a lot of meetings tonight, public meetings. I just went out there and looked. We're kind of toward the bottom. If you look for the reopening operations and services, you can click on that, and there's a document that says document. Yes, I think it says document. Normally, we will put our slides from our presentation on there, but tonight you'll find a document that is all of the scenarios to date. It's the scenario we're going to talk about tonight. The content from that is toward the end in scenario 3. Then we're going to go back and talk about scenario 1 and 2 again. We've made edits over the last couple meetings. And so that document is there. It's the document that's going to lead toward the draft of our entire reopening recommendation document. So next slide, please. Our agenda tonight, and I did have to swap a couple things because it didn't make sense tonight. We are going to discuss our reopening scenario number 3 after the welcome. Then we are going to review information from prior meetings, and then we'll talk about next steps and adjournment. Next, please. I'm one of the co-chairs, Chuck Longfellow from Delaware Department of Education. I'm Associate Secretary for Operations Support. Our other co-chair, Oliver Gums from Cape Henlopen School District, Director of Business Operations, could not join us yet tonight. He may be here, maybe not. Tonight there are several districts that have board meetings and other things going on, so some of our district people may not be able to join us, or they may join us late. Also, some legislators may still be working, so we might see them come in when they're available. Also, partner is Andrew Buer from Opportunity Labs Foundation. So next we'll go on to slide 4, which has our list of members. And let's go down the list kind of as a roll call. I know that Heath Chazanov is one of the people who had something going on in the district. And I believe Sherry may too. So
yes, Sherry's not here yet.
Sherry's not here yet. So I think those two have district things going on. I believe I saw David Hearn. So let's start with David Hearn and go down the list.
David Hearn is the athletic director and driver's ed teacher at Delmar High School.
Do we have Stacy Clark?
Yep, Stacy Clark, Director of Instruction and Student Services, First State Military.
I don't see Natasha yet.
No, she's not able to be with us this evening.
Good evening, Gerald Allen, Newcastle County Votech School District, Director of School Operation and Personnel.
Christine Bewley, Manager of Information Systems for the Red Clay Consolidated School District, representing technology.
Ms. Wright,
Leaga Wright, Indian River School District Board Member.
thank you.
Mary Ashburton with the Office of Management and Budget.
Jeff Tashner, Executive Director, Delaware State Education Association.
I'm Mike Williams with the Delaware State PTA.
All right, like I said, some of our legislators might not be here yet. Representative Jakes, are you here? Not hearing him. How about Senator Sokola?
Chuck, he is here though. There he goes.
Okay,
And State Representative Earl Jakes, Chair of the House Education Committee.
all right, Senator Sokola. Okay, Representative Postals. And Senator Lawson.
Representative Postles is here, but not Senator Lawson.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Next slide, please. So you've heard this a few times before. We believe everyone has a voice, so we want to hear from everybody. We respect all opinions. We are focused on our purpose, which we'll hear about in a couple slides. We'll be succinct. We'll try not to reiterate what other folks say, other than just to say, I agree with so-and-so. And we'll use the hand raise feature in this meeting. That's how we will recognize you so that you can make your comment. And we know we may need to compromise. Next slide, please. As we said at the beginning, we welcome public comment. We want public comment. As we go through and put all of the ideas into our recommendation document, we also take a look at what's out there and see if there are things that we should consider with our recommendations. You can submit them through reopening ideas at doe.k12.de.us email or voicemail 302-735-4244. We know that there's a chat function on our YouTube channel. However, that's not the official avenue for doing public comment. If you think that you see a great idea out there, or if you have a great idea that you put in that YouTube chat, please also put it in reopening ideas at doe.k12.de.us or the voicemail so we can get that in the record as a public comment. Everything is transcribed. It's forwarded to the work groups, and the comments are posted on the reopening page. You can see a quick link to the page right there. Next slide, please. Purpose is to deliver a framework, a recommendation to the Secretary of Education. We don't recommend whether schools should open for in-person instruction. That's a decision that belongs to someone else. That's the governor and the public health experts who do that. Next, please. We will include recommendations on what needs to be done, but the how details are not part of what we're doing. But some of your comments, your public comments, might inform those who are making those how decisions. Next, please. Here's our timeline. We've had a few meetings already, and tonight, 25th of June, we're going to discuss scenario 3, substantial spread. We're also going to go back and take another look at scenarios 1 and 2, and then I have to be determined on July 2nd. The draft that we received for scenario 3 doesn't have a whole lot of pages to it, so we may say, hey, we're done or just about done tonight, and that we might not need another meeting. So I want to discuss that with the committee on the other side of our discussion. If the committee believes that we should meet again, then we'll meet again. If the committee believes that, hey, look, we can just, once we process the comments we made tonight and the public comments that we receive, that we can just give written feedback based on what we see, then that's fine too. Next, please. So this is scenario 3. This is what we're calling significant community spread. The R naught is significantly greater than 1, which means there's a lot of spread going on. We have a lot of positive tests going on. The capacity to hospitalize people and treat people is stressed. Testing capacity is stressed. Next, please. To keep our schools safe, it's kind of like going back to our phase 1 that we experienced with the shutdown of the state. And schools should be closed for in-house activities. The status of school operation for this scenario would be schools are closed for in-person instruction. I would expect that we could draw from a lot of the lessons learned from being closed this past spring, from March through June. Next, please. So again, as we did the other weeks, our questions to consider are, what should be added to this list of essential actions? Should any essential actions be deprioritized? And should any of the actions be reordered? So next, please. Our first slide is facilities. So here we have school buildings closed. Essential staff are maintaining the schools to prepare for the return, executing school cleaning and disinfection according to the CDC school decision tree. And there are some recommendations here about face masks and special respirators, which I would think came from the CDC. This is what we have for facilities for substantial spread or significant community spread. So what kind of things should we add to this or move from this or modify from this? Do
We have Jeff's hand raised.
Okay, let's go with Jeff.
So Chuck, I think one thing we got to consider is identifying, planning, and preparing for other essential uses. The one that comes to mind is the meal preparation program. Everything that's on here for facilities is really towards the cleaning and maintenance of the building. But we know from our prior experience, there were actually some other essential services or programs that we were still running out of the building. And, it's figuring out what those are and then planning and preparing for those if there is a time when we're closing down.
Thanks. That's a good one. What other comments do we have on facilities?
I have a thing, if I may, Chuck. This is Earl Jakes.
Representative.
I think what we're experiencing now is we're using our facilities for testing and all that. That will probably continue.
Testing sites, yeah. That goes along with what Jeff just said too.
Absolutely.
We have Christine's hand raised.
Christine, go ahead.
So the fourth bullet where it talks about custodial staff should wear face masks and special respirators. It seems like every day in the news, it's changing as to what the requirements are. There's another publication, the New England Journal of Medicine, about it might not be able to be spreading based on contact. So maybe we can reword that so that it doesn't say they should wear masks, but the custodial staff should wear protective something based on CDC recommendations, because that can change between what we're doing now and if we were to go back into a phase 1.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Reword to follow CDC. Don't specify. Okay. All right. Do we have another comment?
Not right now.
Okay. So for facilities, I think we also need to consider, well, if we close school buildings, we also typically close to outside groups. So we need to explore, what that relationship is like. So. Does everybody, for our schools, especially for our school folks out there, when we close the school down for face-to-face instruction, I believe most, if not all, also close to outside buildings and field use and all that too, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, if we don't have anything else for facilities right now, let's go on to the next one, which is operations. Yes,
Or-
go ahead.
we have Christine with her hand back up.
Okay, let's go back and recognize Christine. And I think there was another voice.
So when we go into this phase, we talked a lot last week and the week before about what happens in phase two if the schools if the schools go and close down. So are those steps kind of taken into account in this phase as well? Because these slides are very limited compared to what we talked about the last 2 weeks. So are we assuming that we're doing those steps plus these additional steps?
Andrew, you're on here, right?
Yeah, I am. That's exactly right, Christine. They're supplemental, right? So you can read this as supplemental to what happened in scenario 2. Though the only nuance I would add is that I think Jeff made a really good point a couple weeks ago. There's probably a different set of reasons that schools might close, right? There could be a short close if there's a positive case of COVID-19 that is happening just in school and recognized among a student or staff member, and then there is a situation where there's larger closures based on community status of the disease, and so these should be viewed as supplemental to what's in scenario 2 for school closures.
Chuck, Representative Jakes has his hand up.
Okay, Representative.
Okay, I just figured out how to put my hand up, by the way. Thank you. When we say our schools are closed, they're only actually partially closed, right? We're still going to have people going to go in there to produce learning materials and things of that from time to time, not constantly, but time to time. Is that correct, or am I off base here?
I think that's a good thing to consider, because I know that some of that happened during this closure we just had. So I think that we should need to put something in here to establish procedures for staff who need to come in for certain specific reasons. I don't know how to word that, but that's what I'll write down. Yeah.
Jeff might be able to share a little bit more light on that, and some of our educators. We're really struggling with those who have special needs. And I just heard from a whole group about they prefer to have printed handouts as opposed to distance learning by video, right? And so I would say that we're going to have to go into the building to get stuff made from time to time.
Right. And if we do that, we need to have some processes and procedures to make sure we can facilitate that and make sure that we do it as safely as possible.
Yeah, and limited parts of the building would be used, hopefully.
All right. Any other hands up?
Yes, Jeff.
Okay, Jeff.
Chuck, just building on what Representative Jake said, I had talked earlier about identifying those other essential programs, and he's added to that there might be other activities that need to be conducted within the building to support the remote learning process. And it may be beneficial, based on our prior experience or our recent experience, for districts to identify the sort of things that he was talking about and that we learned about that we will need to provide access to the building, because he's exactly right in the sense that the buildings were closed to students and to outside groups, and the governor's directive identified employees providing remote learning as essential employees. So they were allowed to be in the buildings if they needed to be in there to somehow support the remote learning process. So I think we can either build it into what I suggested or add it as a separate line.
Okay. All right. Any more hands for facilities?
Not right now.
Okay,
Oh,
if not-
I have mine up.
sorry, David.
okay, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So I'm trying to think how to word what everyone is saying there. We had a steady rotation of staff members based on school level and we have middle school and high school all in one building. So we had a steady rotation of teachers who could come in on certain days at certain times, and teachers would sign up for that for a time. And surveys were sent out by our administration. And so for those who were going to send out written packets, we made that available to all students. So they had the option of the written packets as well as the virtual learning. And but you're putting a lot of pressure on the administration that was producing, because we didn't want all teachers in that building trying to hit the Xerox machines and produce the packets. So we had people who were assigned for that purpose, and then making those available to parents and students is also a challenge, and trying to get them not to all show up at the same time. So we produced a schedule to do all that, and our administration did a pretty good job of that. And so I don't know how you would word a rotation provided for teachers to come into the building to get the items they need, whether it be scanning materials onto a USB or whatever they're doing. It's still a lot of teachers needed to get into the building to do the things they do.
Great point. Any other hands for facilities?
I think we're good for now.
Okay. Yep, go ahead. I think I heard Representative Jakes. No? Okay. Let's go to operations. Next slide. And operations included food service budget, attendance, procurement, stuff like that. So here we have, this is the only bullet point we have for this in the draft, and that's continue to necessary materials and supply chain for cleaning and disinfection supplies. So are we to understand for this one as well that it builds upon scenario 2?
Yes.
Okay, great. Any hands for this area?
Yes, we have Christine.
Okay, go ahead, Christine.
So something that I noticed is really missing off of this is if we are to go into a shutdown, it's been brought up a few times about nutrition, about feeding our students. But I think something should be added here about like institute feeding programs to ensure that the students are still receiving meals if we are to completely shut down.
And then another one, I know it might fit under some other place, but I know that the school district CFOs dealt a lot with this, and I know that Oliver would mention it if he were here. But there's also the consideration of if you're shut down. I know that bus drivers and some other staff continue to get paid in order to ensure that those contracts were available when and if school came back up. And of course, we hope that school would come back up by the end of the year. It did not, but I think it's with contracting, we have to know. I kind of lost my train of what I was going to say with that, but we need to explore what's our contractual obligation, and what as far as the state goes, what's the intent as far as with the funds. Do we do the same thing that we did with transportation, or would it be different next time? I don't know, but I think we have to be clear on what that is. We can't flounder there, because if the shutdown happens as quickly as it did back in March, we don't have time to go through everything and redo contracts and so forth.
Chuck, we have Jeff, and then Stacy, and then Representative Jakes.
Okay, let's go in that order.
So, Chuck, I don't know if this was picked up by academics and equity or health and wellness, but I think that districts need to identify now either contingencies or alternative approaches for providing related services to our most vulnerable students. I'm thinking about, the PT, the occupational therapy, the speaking English pathology, all that stuff that we typically are able to do in person. If we go to a shutdown, at least understanding what is and is not feasible and putting plans in place so that we can pivot quickly and have some continuity of services would be, I think, in everybody's best interest. That, from what I've heard, like Representative Jake said, has been one of the biggest challenges in the shutdown we had from March to the present, is that the challenges with the disadvantaged students and how do you get those related services to them when we can't bring them to the building.
Good one. All right, who do we have next?
Stacy.
Hi, I'm going to just jump in on the food thing. It did. I know from personal experience, it took 6 weeks for the company to be able to get us food to order. That's, so I think looking at options, but some places are limited. A lot of smaller schools are limited as far as also delivering, and transporting. Not all buses and people are clear to do that. So maybe any options or even, a list of places to go. That's what we ended up having to do.
Okay. Thank you. Next comment, next hand.
Representative Jakes.
Feeding off of Mr. Tashner's comments about disadvantaged students, many of them get their health care through our wellness centers. So will they be closed, or are we going to keep some of them open? Or are we going to have some kind of way that can work? Because that's where they're getting their health care. You hear me?
Yes, I do. I don't know the answer to that.
Neither do I. I'm just saying that should be on there. I don't know if this is the right place to put it on there, but we need to be finding out about that issue because that's where they're going to get their health care. I think Jeff can probably expand on that.
Yep. We can maybe we can reword that as a recommendation. So so what would we do to reword that as a recommendation to explore alternatives for students who rely on wellness centers? I'll say that for now. Okay, any other hands?
Not right now. Oh, yes, Christine.
Sorry. I know we talked about this in phase 2, but is there anything that we need to add here about unit count funding? If we are completely shut down, or do we cover that enough in phase 2?
Let's cover it again now, and then as we go back through phase 1 and 2, we can see if we hit it. So how would we call that? How would we do that as a recommendation?
I think we need some guidance from the Department of Ed as to what will be acceptable for unit count reporting, because the way that we have done it, we've always done it. If we are in a remote learning environment, we can't ensure that the child has been sitting in a seat one day the last 10 days of September, and we need additional guidance around the special ed requirements and the dates for IEPs, and a lot of that's happening right at the end of the count. So we need some guidance from the Department of Ed as to leniency with some of that. I don't know how you want to phrase that.
Okay, I have it so far as obtain guidance from DOE on how to do unit count, attendance, flexibility, etc. Okay, thank you. Do we have any other hands at this point?
Not right now.
Okay, and something might jog our memory or our thoughts too as we go back through 1 and 2 later tonight. If no more hands, let's move on to technology. Okay. Take a quick look at this and let me know if you have any thoughts of anything to add or move or so forth for the significant spread.
We have Jeff and then Representative Jakes that would like to make a comment.
Okay, Jeff.
Good thing my trigger finger's quick and I'm always getting in one step ahead of him tonight, but it's another story. And I'll defer to Christine as the subject matter expert on this, but when I read it, Chuck, everything here seems focused on the students and the parents. And I know we've talked a little bit previously about it, but I want to make sure we don't miss the support that our educators and staff will need if they are back in a remote learning environment. Both those technical issues that can come up, connectivity, the platform's got an issue, something of that sort, as well as support for use of best practices, technology to promote high quality learning. So I didn't want that to be lost somewhere. Like I say, I know this is Christine's area, so I would look to her and others, but I just didn't want that to go unrecognized.
Thanks. So tech support for educators and staff and support for best practices to support high quality learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, next hand.
Representative Jakes.
My question really is a question, I guess, to some degree, is that right now, the internet providers such as Comcast and that are given special rates. Will that continue as we move forward, or how are we going to handle that? And same way when we get new students keep coming in, right now we got CARES Act money to buy, the tablets and all that stuff. When that stops, there is a cutoff. When that stops, or how are we going to handle that? That's just kind of a question, I guess.
All right. Well, Representative, we don't do questions, we do recommendations. So what I got for you is special rates for technology, explore extending them, and CARES Act, plan for when that money is gone, how to support technology. Is that what you were looking for? Representative, did that hit your points?
Yeah, good for me.
Excellent. Any other hands on technology?
Yep, so Representative Postles, you want to go ahead?
Thank you. A couple points, kind of reiterating what Jeff said in terms of support for teachers. I know that if we really get into this mode pretty well, we're going to have to see that there is support for the teachers, and I don't know, just the technical aspect of they're having some problems with a particular device or the platform or something, but in helping to also, some ways that we can use technology to a greater extent than what we've been this time. And then the point that I would really strongly need to say again, Chuck, and we've talked about it before some, and I'm not sure this is the proper place, but I'm going to launch it and we'll move it where it needs to go. And that is the addressing the infrastructure. And that's something that, as I've said before, needs to be doing now. We do have deserts here where they do not get service. Not only isn't there Comcast or other services, their cell tower service is not good, so they can't even use Wi-Fi hotspots. It's not a lot of people, but it is also some of our students that are highest need students. And so we've got to go back and look at, Earl's right, the rates of delivery of service are going to be important, but just having the service to those areas. What are we doing? I know this is scenario 3 where there's a close down, but we need to be working on this continually, preparing for that, because that's not something, I mean, it's not too hard to get some additional devices, Chromebooks or whatever, in the hands of people. But if you can't get service, then it doesn't make any difference. You can have a pocket full of devices. We've got to look at service to those areas that don't get service. So I'm going to keep beating that drum as long as we're beating.
Right. Yeah. I do like the comment that we've been making the last couple times. It would be great when internet is like a utility and that you can,
Yes.
you can turn it on and it's there. Yep. That's a great goal. Any other hands for technology?
We do. We have Christine.
Okay, Christine.
So I'm going to kind of respond to Jeff's, his first couple comments there. So that was my initial question earlier in the meeting was, did last week's in phase 2 kind of piggyback into this phase? Because a lot of what we talked about last week, and if we look at the other document a little bit later, there's a lot of red that I added last week. But one thing that I think is missing, which Jeff, you kind of pointed out, was support for staff. So I think I took for granted that the way that I have it in my district is we have a help desk and our staff knows how to get support that way, but maybe we need to add that. I don't know if it goes here or if we would add it to the other part about creating a parent technology support plan, but also maybe we need to add a staff technology support plan. So that's ready to go. And then if we go into a shutdown, that gets instituted, and then everybody knows how to obtain support. The monitoring and device usage, to me, that can kind of go 2 ways. It can be, is the student connecting with teachers on some type of Zoom or WebEx, or are they having interactions with teachers? Or just like a safe use of devices at home. It's something that is very near and dear to my heart, that I'm sending devices home to students and I want them to be safe in their environment and what they're searching. So I know the state has been looking at some content filtering for when devices are outside the state network. So Chuck, I don't know if that can be incorporated here along with the compliance. And
go ahead. Keep on
one of the other things about the LMS, about being able to provide students able to submit assignments, that was something I covered last week too, to make sure that they have something they can use. And Schoology is what the state of Delaware supports and provides. So hopefully that can be taken into account for that last bullet.
Okay. Learning management system. Do any of the districts and charters that you all are aware of, I know we said we have a tech support, tech help desk. Did any of them, and I might be stepping on another group's territory, I don't know, but were there any like instructional help desks for how to teach with technology, or especially maybe a special ed teacher, kind of a help desk or something with how to teach through technology, just to try to, I guess they would have had resources in the instructional area to draw upon, right? Is that something that would be technology related, or is that kind of out of our scope, you think? Not hearing anything, so it might be out of scope. I don't know. But do we have any more hands at this point?
Chuck, this is Jeff. I'm just going to jump in. I don't know that it is out of scope, and I would worry that if you don't call it out here, it may get lost. So my advice is put it on the sheet, and once this goes to the secretary along with the other 2 groups, she can reconcile it into one whole, right?
That's right. That's right. We kind of touched upon it earlier. I don't know if it might have been Representative Jakes or somebody said support for best practices to support high quality learning. I don't remember who said it, but that's part of it. But I think to take it further and to have a resource that you can call upon to get tips on how to use the learning management system, that would be that would be probably an improvement. Any other hands up?
Yes, Stacy's.
Okay, go ahead, Stacy.
So I think we talked about last week, and I guess it's missing on this one because it's last week's, I don't know. But the training for platforms and tools, and we talked about all the policies. I think we also need to put in there about training in data and cybersecurity and student safety. So if we could add that in as well. A communication plan. I'm not sure if we've talked about that, but how that works through, that's always something good to have and be discussed. Another, we keep talking about all these supports. You know, I currently work in a small charter. I've worked in a small charter and I've worked in large districts. Not everybody has support plans or support people, 5 or 6 in different things. So I think that's a great idea, but in order to do that, it comes with funding. So again, I'm going to say that. I don't think anybody's mentioned it this week, but somebody else mentioned it, and we have the CARES Act, which is great, and that's to kind of get us through a small little recovery almost. Moving forward, though, to add in all these supports and to add in, even wellness centers. I mean, a lot of schools don't have them, so I just want everybody to be aware of that and think funding is going to be a huge issue. If 20% of the funding increases is what a lot of national places people are saying. Please keep that in mind. And also to have these supports includes data. And there are teachers out there that I know it's incumbent upon any district or school to pay for if they require teachers to be on there during the workday for so many hours, that they should pay for that data. But I think that needs to be mentioned in there as a consideration as well.
Thank you. All right, any other hands for technology?
I think we have one more. David?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to speak for every district. We're a small group, but over Schoology, our teachers communicated with each other with practices that would enable them to deal with sending out assignments to students, receiving assignments back. There was just a steady stream, especially in the beginning, of teachers communicating with each other and discoveries they made with how to best deal with their students. And our IT department at school was extremely helpful. I just speaking for myself, I had one laptop go up and a hover cam that I had to change over, and they were very helpful getting me the tools immediately. I mean, as long as we had the funding to get the things out, but teachers communicated with themselves, and most schools' IT department would do the best they can to answer questions as fast as they can.
All right. So that could be established networks of peer teacher support in tech and instructional tech. Does that sound kind of like what you were getting at?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. Any other hands for technology?
I think we're good for now.
Okay, I'll just give it a couple more seconds and then we will move on to transportation. Okay, this is all we have on this one. So go ahead and say that it builds upon scenario 2. Now, the buses used to deliver meals, some used buses, some used National Guard, some used, I don't know if some used other services like other vans that they had, I don't know. But this is the one we have on here for when schools are closed. And I think this is where, this is what a lot of the buses were doing during the closure. What else do we want to put in here for transportation when closed? I mean, with transportation, you're not bringing kids to school.
So we do have a hand up, and as you can see, I wanted to let everyone know that Oliver was able to join us too. We have Stacy's hand and then Christine's hand.
Okay, let's go with transportation, or let's go with, you said Christine? Christine,
Stacey
okay.
first. Yeah.
Or Stacy, go ahead, Stacy.
Hi, thank you. I just want to remind you that transportation and buses delivery is not an option for every school or every location. So, I think maybe, or considering, getting out information of local food banks and things. That needs to be down there too, because that's not an option for some.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll say the language on here probably needs to be softer because some use buses and some can't. So, and I'll go back to operations, which food service is part of, and I will add into operations the bullet about explore locate other options such as food banks for feeding. Okay. All right. What's the other hand we had? We had Christine.
That's right.
Go ahead, Christine.
So we did use our buses to deliver meals and the packets. So someone had mentioned earlier in the call about education packets. So we kind of lumped those two together. But I think we should consider reducing contact to a week's worth of meals during a designated time. We were handing out meals twice a week, and the fruit, it was tough to keep up with the fruit not going bad. Like maybe we just take out that bullet. Or limiting it to, not every day or something to make it not once a week, because that's pretty specific saying that in there.
Okay, definitely agree. I know that, as far as I knew, the school nutrition people were out there making it happen. They had very little time to spin up their operation, and I think they did an outstanding job statewide with that. And so, if we talk about lessons learned, I think that we should just have them. It'd be great to have them write down what they did in case we have to do it again, because that was great. What else do we have in transportation? Any other hands out there?
Not right now.
All right. Okay, well, it sounds like that's scenario 3. We'll have opportunities to review our information, I think, with a document that is coming out after today. What we'll do now is go to slide 17, and it says review. Okay, so we will refer to the all scenarios document that we sent out. And again, if you're in the YouTube channel and you just joined us, I'm looking at my screen with the YouTube channel as if I'm talking to them. That doesn't work that way. If you're on the YouTube channel and you joined us through that, if you want to take a look at the document that we're looking at right now, we have posted it with the agenda on the public meetings website. Go to publicmeetings.delaware.gov and go to today, and down toward the bottom, you'll find this meeting. Click on that meeting link and you'll see a link for document, and that's what this one is. So what we'll do now is we'll go through this scenario 1 document and see if we have any. We already went through it a couple meetings ago, but we'll see if we have any more changes to this. We're getting very close to the end of the process so that this can be melded into the overall recommendations document with the health and wellness and academics and equity work group work. So I'm going to bring up a big version of it here so I don't have to look at it on my little phone screen. The first page is just an overview of what scenario 1 is. That's few of, if any, COVID cases locally are not as significant. The spread is significantly less than 1, the rate. So let's go down to page, this doesn't have page numbers, does it? Page 2. Page 2 is operations and services, facilities. And we have due before school buildings open for in-person instruction. Take a quick look at those and see if there's anything that we needed at this point to take off or move or that we no longer agree with? If we have any hands, Alyssa, just call them out.
Sure will. We don't right now.
Okay, let's go to the next page, page 3, which is still facilities. Facilities due before school open, our buildings open for in-person instruction. Okay, let's go to when school buildings are open. So it's continue facility operations and maintenance schedules. Operations due before school buildings open. This is the bottom of page 3.
Sorry about that.
Okay, let's go to the top of the next page.
Sorry, it jumped on me. Give me 1 second.
I saw that. So we should be at the top of page 4.
Almost there.
That's okay.
Now I went too far. There we go.
I think a change I have on this one is that second bullet that says develop a plan to replace. Let me write my notes here. I think maybe develop a plan to backfill or something. I don't think we're trying to well, we have to have, we need the work to be done, but I don't think replace might be too harsh a word. So I think maybe we need to come up with a different word. We're really looking for to make sure that we cover the work. So review, page 4, second bullet, replace with backfill or something serious or similar.
Backfill or supplement, maybe.
Supplement. Okay, got it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So still on page 4, let's go down a little further. Yes, you did. Okay, toward the bottom of page 4. Okay, let's go to page 5. We'll start to see some red words. Red words are things that we changed from the original, I believe. Andrew, does this include all the changes that we made from the start, or is this just the changes we made in the last week or two?
Yeah, the red are just changes from the last week or two. The entire thing is changes from the start, of which I went back and looked yesterday. There was about 123 suggestions from this group, and I think 113 of them are in the document. The 10 that aren't are mostly ones that fell in either the wellness or instructional committee's purview.
Okay, great. Were we able to, did we have some changes that also were in the public comment?
Yeah, there was a number of changes that came in through public comment that are reflected in this document, and I've been following the wellness and instructional conversations closely over the last couple of weeks, and I know both of those committees' recommendations will include a number of recommendations that came right out of public comment as well.
Great, great. Any hands yet? Let's go to the top
Not
of
yet. Nope.
page 6, scenario 1, transportation.
Christine, go ahead.
So my transportation office asked me to kind of pose this question about buses. So I guess there is a point at which buses can no longer be used when they hit a certain age. And their question was, is there any opportunity to extend that age limit by a year, like not saying 10 years, that might, but maybe another 3 years. For example, we have 10 buses that are going to have to go out of service this year because of the age. Is it a possibility for DOE to extend that by a year or two? And that would give us some additional buses to be able to work into the rotation for the start of school and decrease some sizes of bus routes.
Okay, so how could would that go in this scenario 1? Is that what we would do? Maybe. I'll put page 6, transportation. I think it's 14 years. I'm trying to think of what it actually is. It's something like that. But so the recommendation could be to explore with DOE the feasibility of extending the allowable useful life of buses. And who knows, it could be a U.S. Department of Transportation thing. I don't know exactly where the number comes from, but if they have flexibility to explore, if they can, as long as that bus is still safe.
Yeah, I know we mentioned regulatory flexibility somewhere, so that this would be a good area to mention that regulatory flexibility related to the useful life of buses. Because I think that is a Delaware thing, that I think it's 12 years.
Okay.
Representative Jakes, you want to go ahead and make your comment?
We just extended it in this year's budget, the life of buses because of cost and stuff like that. So it'll be a coordination between DOE and JFC getting that taken care of.
Okay. Yep. So I have another one, explore with DOE, extending permissible useful life of buses if possible. All right, so we're still.
Oh, we have one more. David, go ahead.
This would be from the athletic directors that I've spent some time with this week, and this would be almost, I don't know if it's in operations, facilities, it kind of straddles them both, provide guidance to DIAA regarding school-based athletics and extracurricular activities. And this would have bullets beneath it that would include DPH and the Department of Education updates regarding which sports are impacted at various levels or various phases, and also protocols for spectators, if we have them, and various facilities, custodial services, or the custodial service team ensure that outdoor facilities are ready for staff, students, visiting teams, and spectators. So I know that was a major topic with the athletic community in the state, trying to get guidance as early as possible. That would be a do now type thing.
All right. I got provide guidance to DIAA on school-based athletics and after-school activities, and then you had 3 bullets. The second one was protocols for spectators. What was the first one again?
Department of Public Health, DPH and DDOE updates regarding sports that are impacted at various phases. As the phases change, they have various restrictions change. So any kind of updates they can get as they're coming is very helpful to all the folks who are involved in them.
All right. Great. Any other hands at this point?
Yep, Christine, go ahead.
So Christine?
Sorry. So about athletics and after-school activities, our activity buses in the afternoons that bus on the students who stay for practices after schools are really crowded. Is there anywhere we could put in here about obtaining additional state funding to add additional activity buses in the afternoon to cut down on the number of students on the buses?
All right, I will reframe that as a recommendation and write it down. Explore additional funding. Okay, I'll write that down. Any other hands at this point?
We are good for now.
Okay, Alyssa, keep scrolling. We were at the, so you're on page, you're going to page 7 now. Okay, and that's technology. Christine, oh wait, any hands?
Not yet.
Yeah, I know Christine wrote most of the stuff that was in here. This is great.
Okay, I'll just chime in. But this is where we would want to add something about a support plan for teachers. So I just want to make sure that that makes it into
Okay.
our staff.
Any other hands at this point for technology, scenario 1?
Not right now.
Hey, Christine, just a question. It's Andrew. I'm wondering, do you think it's worth just replicating everything that's in scenario 2 again in scenario 3, or should we just sort of talk about it as additive? What do you think is the most intuitive for folks in the field?
And that's why I keep asking that question, because when you see scenario 3 and there's those 2 or 3 bullets, there's a lot that goes in beforehand, like in preparation for it. But like the things that are on, and I don't know, I'm looking on 2 different pages here, but when some of the things in this technology for scenario 1, what doesn't make sense if we're in like scenario 2, scenario 3 about, you know, assessing technology needs for loaner devices during spring 2020. I was going to go through this and kind of send my feedback as to what, you know, I think some of these bullets are kind of replicated in the wrong place, but I just didn't have a chance to do that before today's meeting.
Yep. But it sounds like, and I saw Stacy shaking her head yes too, that we should probably not only call out that some of these things are additive, but actually just duplicate them for each scenario with slight amendments based on what is appropriate in those scenarios. And your feedback on that would be incredibly helpful.
Great.
Awesome.
Andrew, I like that approach, because then if this is something that somebody wants to just grab and go, they won't have to page here and there to find all this stuff. It's just, okay, I can use this as a checklist if it applies to me, or if I, you know, if it's a recommendation I want to take, that kind of thing. So, all right. Any other stuff on technology for scenario 1? We on page, what page are you on, Alyssa? Is that page 7, page 8?
This is page 8.
Okay. Now, toward the bottom of page 8, we have do when school buildings are open for in-person instruction, technology, scenario 1. Hands at this point?
Not yet.
Okay, let's go to the top of page 9. Oh, that's a blank page, isn't it? Oh, that's scenario 2. So scenario 1, let's make sure we got everything. Tech, we got transportation. There's operations up. Okay. Anything else for scenario 1 in general before we move on to
Go
scenario
ahead.
2? Go ahead.
I'm just going to continue to talk tonight. So And it's come up in the academic and I think the wellness sessions as well, is even though we're open for in-person instruction, we're going to have to be able to provide instruction to students who are not comfortable, who might have reasons not to be coming to school for medical reasons. So even though we're saying like compile technology facing lessons for inclusion in the district's remote learning plan, does that need to be broken out a little bit more to talk about if we need, because it's not just in-person instruction, we may be needing to provide in-person and remote instruction at the same time.
Okay. So not exactly sure where it fits, but plan to support learning for students whose parents chose not to send them to school. And I'm sure there are lots of folks out there who just shuddered at that thought. You know, how long do you allow that? You know, do you accommodate it for a while and then say, okay, no more, or do you give it a transition time or the cutoff, or do you leave it open-ended until COVID is a distant memory? Or, you know, if you have a cutoff, but you have students with IEPs who, you know, you've got to make FAPE, what do you do in those cases? So I know it's an extremely complicated issue, but you know, you still got to think about it and plan for it, and just know that you're going to face those situations. I think every district and charter school, especially of any size, are going to face at least a couple of those situations. So that bullet is like huge in itself. Where it goes, I don't know. Anything else for scenario 1?
We don't have any hands right now.
Okay, let's move on to scenario 2. That's moderate spread. It could be moderate spread in the community. It could be you were open and then you had a flare up, so you had to situationally close. That's what that situation is. There's some spread in the community. I see a note down here at the bottom of page 10, recommended essential items below should be reviewed as additive and in some cases in replacement of those outlined in scenario 1. So yep, go down to the bottom of 10 so everybody can see that. Okay, page 11. We're in scenario 2 now, operations and services, facilities. Let's take a look at that. Before school buildings open for in-person instruction. If no hands yet, let's move on to page 12. Any hands out there yet?
Not yet.
I remember we had some good, healthy discussion on a lot of these. Top of page 12 is if school buildings are instructed to close. Here we have again that 4th bullet where we're saying that we should wear certain things. I wonder if we need to make that more like a follow the current guidance on, you know, protective equipment or something. I'll make a note, and when they crank the recommend the suggestions through the draft, you know, they can take a look and consider that. Page 12, 4. Any hands at this point?
Not yet.
Let's go to the lower part of 12, or that next part, when school buildings reopen for in-person instruction and the beginning of operations. I guess that's all of operations. Okay. Any changes to operations? This red is what we did last time.
Christine, go ahead.
For that first bullet about unit count, do we need to put in there something about the students if the parents wish to keep them home? Because it wouldn't be a homeschooling situation. The district would still be responsible for educating them. Do we need to, tease out how they're defined? They'd still be on our rolls.
I agree. We need to put in there how to address situations of where the parents keeping the kid home. So we need to add that in there, the first bullet. Any other hands?
Not yet.
All right. Let's see. Did we talk about consumables at one point? I thought one of our conversations, I don't know if it's our group or maybe a different group, talked about, if making sure that students have supplies at home if they're going to do stuff at home. Some students, they go to the district I worked in before, the social workers had closets with not only clothing, but school supplies and stuff like that. Is that something we should add in here under operations, instructed to close? I'm going to put it in anyway, just as they can consider it. So let's see, we're moving to page 13, technology.
Chuck, we have one more comment where we are. Jeff, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Chuck, I was just actually following up on what you just commented on. I raised that last week based on what I had heard from some of the other groups, that it wasn't just the devices, but a lot of times it was, the thought about, think about everything's kids come to school and that is shared. It could be a textbook. It could be, we provide pencils, papers, rulers, all that stuff. My suggestion last week is that in planning for the possibility of either partial or total remote learning, districts really taking inventory of what it is kids may need, and then making sure they have that on hand, and then a way to distribute it. So I think back to March 13th this year when everybody left school. If we had any inkling at that time that kids would not be coming back for an extended period, to be able to give them a backpack that would have all those supplies that they would have needed for the foreseeable future, from what I'm hearing from a lot of the educators, would have been a huge benefit. So yeah, that I think it absolutely needs to be there.
Oliver, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so I finally figured out how to get my hand up and get back to the screen. Back on the previous, when you were talking about enrollment, Chuck, it seems to me that we already anticipate that there are going to be parents that opt out of having their children come to school Maybe it might be worth also adding a sentence in there about creating an opt-out procedure related to enrollment. It's going to happen, so we need to kind of think about what that procedure is for when parents opt out of sending their students to school, whether it's because they're scared or whether the kids are sick or in a compromised situation. There needs to probably be some kind of opt-out procedure developed by DOE with the districts.
All right, thank you. That's a good one. Their hands. Okay, let's go back to the top of 13. Technology. I'd like to thank Christine and everybody else who really gave a lot of content to this last time.
Christine, go ahead.
So I've been thinking about your question about instructional technology and where it would fit. And I think the third bullet down where we're talking about and develop a district plan, including the LMS, I think this would be the bullet to add it and maybe change providing training and support for teachers. We kind of reword that to provide instructional technology support and training for teachers to adapt remote learning skills for the classroom. And I'm thinking about it, instructional technology is so closely related to the technology and the device itself. So I think it should be here and also in the academic group that's working as well.
Great points. Thank you. All right, let's move down to the lower part of 13. Just a thought from my personal experience with 2 kids and remote learning is sometimes it was hard to keep track of when each Zoom, whatever was, and what was live and what was a drop-in office hour. I don't know and I know that some tried to do that through Schoology, but there was just no one-two place to find out for this kid, what are all the meetings that she needs to get on at what time and what, I don't know. Is that, Christine, in your experience, is that in the LMS? Is that not out there at any place?
No, I mean, the calendar wise, it might be a coordination of something that I think maybe more on the academic side, to coordination of Zoom meetings and times and by grade level, or is it 1 meeting per week? Is it 1 meeting per day? I think those structures would be happening at the school level, but it's not necessarily through Schoology.
I just had a hard time, knowing, which day was at 10 o'clock, and then, having the some of the access information I get through email. Some would be on Schoology, and I think over time they all kind of gravitated towards Schoology, but I just didn't know if there was a calendaring system or whatever. Yeah.
There is a calendar system in Schoology that can be used if they put them on as like assignments or things that are due. They can use that calendar system. So I think that's where maybe some guidance from the instructional tech world might be able to help with that.
Mm-hmm. So do we have covered in here just some advanced training on using all the features of the LMS, or was that implied?
That was implied, but I have no problem adding that if you want to add that in there.
I'll do it. Provide. All right, anything else on page 13?
Stacy, you want to go ahead?
Go ahead, Stacy.
I think that is what, when I was talking about communication plan, a whole communication plan, not just one person, but People that, use Schoology or whatever. I've heard that from other places as well. I think it is confusing, especially probably if you're a bigger district. And to have a calendar of sorts, that's what we had, but we're smaller. So I do think that's part of the communication plan and making sure the families have that the teachers are and staff are working together to coordinate so that, if it's fifth grade that in sixth grade, and not everybody's on the exact same time. But I think that's more instructional as well. But I think if you put in a communication plan, that should be a piece of it.
Okay.
Most schools did have set times that I'm aware of.
All right, thank you. Page 14, we're still talking about technology. And then down toward the bottoms, if school buildings are instructed to close in a scenario 2 situation. Any hands?
Not yet.
If not, go to the top of, we're at 15. So let's just pause here and see if anyone has any other comments about scenarios 1 or 2.
Christine, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I don't know if I missed transportation or I kind of scrolled by it. But I did did we talk about it?
I think we did. Let's go. You know what? It is not here. Andrew, did I drop a page or something, or?
Yeah, we might have dropped a page. It should be there.
Yeah, this is the start of scenario 2.
Yeah, we can make sure we circulate the transportation 2 conversation that we had. The vast majority of transportation related considerations that we discussed do fall in health and wellness. So I know it's well represented there, Christine. Remember in our conversation 2 weeks ago, we actually sort of preemptively took the transportation conversation first before health and wellness got to it. But we can certainly re-add in some of the operational considerations relative to transportation, because there are things like assessing your campus's potential for flow of traffic if more families are driving their kids to school and opting out of buses. So it's a good thing to add back into scenario 2, and we can be sure to do that.
I remember it was very brief when we got it, so I kind of crossed us over into the health and wellness lane and looked at their stuff. Yeah.
So are we going to talk about it next week, or I had some feedback that was given to me that I'd like this group to be aware of.
Why don't you go ahead and give it to us so we can log it and get it worked in.
Okay, so I guess the recommendation out of the wellness committee talks about all staff and students wearing face masks. And I heard loud and clear today that they do not want their drivers wearing face masks while physically driving the bus. They don't have a problem with them putting the masks on as the kids enter and leave the bus, but they feel it's a safety concern to have the mask on, especially if they're wearing glasses that they fog up. So that was one thing. They're wondering what happens when and I don't know how this works into this, like what happens when students go to get on a bus and they don't have a mask? How is that going to fall on the bus driver? Are we providing masks to give to students if they don't have them when they get on the bus? We had a long conversation about the windows being open. One recommendation they had is rather than saying all the windows open, can they use the roof hatches to facilitate some airflow versus having the windows down. And And then something that came up in a state meeting today that they just wanted to be known publicly is there, I guess the state transportation supervisors had a meeting today and it was told to them that they were going to have to randomly test their bus drivers for COVID. So I'm hoping, they're really hoping that that doesn't make it into these work groups. That was all I had.
Okay, so that last one was not a recommendation, right?
No, they don't want that in there.
All right. Yep, thanks for keeping us on track with that.
Did they say why they don't want that in there?
I got the impression they don't want the responsibility of randomly testing their drivers for COVID. They were okay with the temperature check if they had to do a temperature screening. Actually facilitating random COVID checks, that's what they weren't in support of.
Okay, so yeah, I'm not sure that that was a suggestion that anybody from the state came up with about random checks. It might have just been a point of discussion today that somebody brought up. So yeah, I don't want it out there right now thinking that the state is saying that we're suggesting you know, that people be randomly, the drivers be randomly COVID checked. So all right, we got those points there on transportation. Let's see. Any other comments on scenarios 1 and 2?
Yes, Liaga.
Go ahead.
Backing off the meetings that we have now. And the biggest concern from the finance office is it appears that everything that has to be done or that will be mandated has a dollar figure to it. And they were concerned about supplies, whether each district was going to have to be responsible for their supplies. Was it a possibility that the state purchased them and then, you know, we buy them back from the state? And also it was a concern that in financial regulations, you can't circumvent a dollar amount. In essence, if it's a $25,000, you can only spend that at one time. You can't go and do like 12,500 one time, 12,000 another time, so that you don't reach that limit. And they were wondering if there was a possibility that those limits and the limitation of spending of how the budget line items are would be changed.
That was considering regulatory flexibility and flexibility in the law that Oliver was talking about a couple meetings ago. So that's definitely relevant. Consider central state purchases of supplies. Okay. Any other hands at this point?
Not right now.
Okay, and another call for flexibility. I'm just making my notes here. So just not lose the thought.
Just as you're doing that, Chuck, as a point of emphasis, I think some of that's actually already being done. Because somehow I just got promoted, got recommended as a contact for the Department of Health and Social Services, where they're buying PPE for the school districts and distributing it. So I think some of this is already being worked on.
I mean, unless you want, you might want to, but those are
So the end of the document that you have is scenario 3, significant community spread, which we just mentioned. So what I wanted to do with the committee is to get your preference on something. So we've moved through these, I think, pretty efficiently. We have some recommendations we made tonight on all of the scenarios that would need to be worked into the document. Then the document, based on the comments we made tonight, will look something like the one that you're looking at now, the one with scenario 1, 2, and 3, and then it'll be integrated with the other 2 work groups. So we could decide to take that document and just give written feedback on it. And then, we can see if we can get that posted on our COVID DOE website so that the public can see it too. Or we can have another meeting in July. So I'm okay with either, but I just wanted to see what the committee thought. We're getting into the heart of summer, and we're losing more and more people per meeting because of work things and other things. And I know that's pretty close to the a couple people said it's pretty close to the holiday. So but I'm willing to have another meeting if you are, but if we don't need it and we can just do a document review with written feedback, that's fine too, and that could save you all a little bit of time in your schedule. So do you have any, and I don't know what process we'll use to decide, maybe just if we have a overwhelming majority one way or the other, it's easy. If it's half and half, maybe we'll go with the meeting. What are the thoughts out there?
Representative Jakes, you want to go ahead?
Email to us, the final that we just went through, and people can send any comments or any changes that they want between now and July the 2nd, which would have been their next meeting, and we move on from there.
All right. Well, I think maybe we might even back that up a little bit. Andrew, when do you think we could get the document with the suggestions put into it? I know we're going to have another batch of public comment come in tomorrow, Friday.
Yeah, I think as soon as we have public comment and can incorporate that probably over the weekend and get something back to this group by Monday at the latest.
Okay. And then when would your group, are the other groups meeting next week?
Yes.
So, okay. So then Wednesday is when they're wrapping up. So is Thursday the 2nd a good deadline if we were to do it that way? For our feedback, or do you need that earlier?
I mean, I think that makes sense.
Okay. All right. So we have one for document review, and I would also, the document we get, I would want to post it online somewhere for the public to react to also. Probably on the COVID-19 site, the reopening site, if that makes sense, at DOE, because it wouldn't be a public meeting agenda to post it on. Any other thoughts?
Why don't you have everybody, we have the hand raise feature, have everybody raise their hands if they're for document review only. That way you can, Alyssa can track it.
Okay, I'm on my phone, doing it on my phone, so if I do the hand raise, if I mess something up, so just consider my hand raised.
There are hands going up everywhere. Let's give it another second or two, and then I will,
Okay.
since this is a public meeting, I'll just do a quick roll call of the hands that are up so that we have it recorded and everyone that's paying attention in the public and on YouTube can hear kind of what the votes are. So this is just making sure that we're clear. This is voting for document review. And we have Representative Postles, Representative Jakes, Gerald, Jeff, Christine, Liaga, Mary Nash, Mike Williams, Oliver.
Chuck.
As the yeses for that. And David.
All right, anyone to know who wants to talk about it, or are they okay with the majority?
I'll go with majority.
Okay.
Okay. Then that makes it unanimous.
Oh, that makes it almost unanimous, but the person did not object, so we're good. So we will we'll ask Andrew and his crew to expeditiously work in all of the comments we had and the public comment that they get in the batch of public comment tomorrow. And I'll monitor my email over the weekend and get this to you as soon as possible. We will not have a July 2nd meeting. I want to thank everybody for their hard work and for their time on this and for reaching out to the different groups that we all represent, and even hearing from the ones that we might not represent. We know, again, we couldn't include everybody on this, but I appreciate your work. And to the folks out there on, again, I try to look at my screen. Folks out there on YouTube who've been with us every week, thank you for stopping in. Thank you for the public comment that you've emailed us. So we will provide comments back, and we will post the draft of that we're reacting to on the COVID site for you all to for the public to look into, so they see the same thing. All right, next steps. We will not have a July 2nd meeting. Again, I want to say that we are accepting public comment, reopening ideas at doe.k12.ded.us or voicemail. There is a COVID-19 page on the DOE website. Just go to DOE or www.doe.k12.ded.us. Click on the red COVID-19 link, and you can see all kinds of stuff we're doing or working on or considering. There's another link under that that says reopening work groups, I believe. Click on that, you'll see what we and the other two groups are doing. And with that, next slide. Thank you, and stay well. And any other comments before we go?
Chuck, it's Jeff. I just had one. I know it's not easy, so I wanted to thank Alyssa for all her fine work and what she did to make these meetings run very smoothly. Been on 1,000 meetings since we went remote, and her role is one that should not be unrecognized. So I wanted to thank her for everything she did.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alyssa Moore.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, I just want to echo that too, and I wanted to thank the committee for all their work and effort in putting this together. It's nice to have some names now and faces to go when I see all the emails going around. But it's been a tremendous honor to work with you guys and for you to share your expertise with me. Thank you.
Another thank you I want to make is to Jen Rousseau from Delaware Department of Education. She takes and she listens to our transcript of everything we say. I take notes, and I know a couple other people are taking notes, but then she'll go through and she'll try to pick out anything that the rest of us missed. So thank you, Jen, as well. Anyone else? All right. Good evening. Thanks, and look forward to your feedback. The meeting is adjourned.